So first, tell us about your trip. Like, where did you go and what did you do?
Alright, so this past January we went with a group called Farmer to Farmer to Guatemala. Um, I also went with a student named Lakiana Jury, who also goes to UW Stout. And for 22 days we were in Guatemala. The first half it was just the two of us. We went to a Spanish school in Antigua for 5 days, and we basically picked up the Spanish. For me, it was just a brush up of what I learned in high school. And then from there, we did our own kind of adventure. We toured a macadamia plantation. We climbed up this volcano called Pacaya. And then the last 2 days, we decided to travel up north, 10-hour bus ride in the dark to Tikal, the ancient Mayan capital. And then once we actually met with the group, Farmer to Farmer, we toured these local sites. Farmer to Farmer is a group that supports sustainable kind of local projects that deal with sustainable agriculture. And we did a bunch of different sites. We went to a lot of independent weavers, Mayan women weavers, who made beads, who made fabrics and stuff like that. And then we got to see how they lived, and we got to see the different types of clothing. An interesting fact is they have, for each their hooplas and their dresses, they all wear the same pattern and they all have the same colors, and that represents what village they're from. So it was interesting to see how they made them and how they kind of supported themselves by these crafts. And then the last part of the trip, we toured about 10 miles north of Mexico to this coffee plantation called La Democracia. And we basically got to see this sustainable coffee co-op where the men and the women had equal parts and equal roles in picking and growing coffee. And we got to see how, and we actually got to buy their coffee and support their local economy, which was really cool.
What was one of your most memorable moments on your trip?
That's tough because there's so many moments, there's so many events. But I would have to say celebrating Martin Luther King Day. We had 4 members of the group who were originally trying to plan a Martin Luther King event in Menominee, but none of us were here, so we didn't get to see it. So we decided to do something in Guatemala, maybe like teach the Guatemalans a little something about Martin Luther King, because like the civil rights movement in the 60s, Guatemala kind of has a segregated class system. There's the indigenous people, the Mayans, who are at the bottom. There's the Mestizoes, who are mixed between native and Spaniard blood, and then on the top there's basically the white people, or the pure almost Spanish, and they have the ruling elites, and at the bottom they basically suppress everyone else. The 5% controls the rest of the 80% who lives in extreme poverty. So basically what we did for Martin Luther King Day is we got this book at a library. It happened to be in Spanish, and it was a children's book about Martin Luther King Day and the history of him. So what we did is we read to these 2 groups of kids, one in Santiago de Actoclan, which is in the Western Highlands, and another to these kids who had just gotten out of school at La Democracia. So we read this book, and then afterwards we kind of had a little discussion with them, and we gave them a piece of paper, and we gave them crayons and markers, and we told them to draw someone inspirational to them, or someone who was kind of a hero to them. And it was funny because at first we thought maybe these kids aren't going to know how to draw or even hold up a pencil. So we were a little anxious about that. But they got right down to it, and they just picked it up and started drawing on everything. And they turned out to be quite the artists. A lot of common figures in their lives were their mothers, families, maestras, which is teachers. Those were the main ones. These kids were about between the ages of 5 and probably 10. And for me, that was probably the most touching for me, just being able to make an impact in these kids' lives and interact with the kids.
What is something that from your trip you wanted to bring back to Stout with you?
Probably just the extreme poverty. I mean, a lot of people don't really know the history of Guatemala, or they don't know, like, they don't even know or care about, like, the history of Latin America. And the truth is that the U.S. was so involved in a negative way in the history of these countries, overthrowing democratically elected governments, supporting these militaries that basically committed like atrocities, almost genocides against their own people. So in Guatemala, there's a civil war, about a 20 or 30 year civil war, which killed 500,000 people. And I mean, despite all of this, the people, especially the Mayan people, they just have so much energy in life, and they have so much. They're so colorful, and they're so just thankful for life. They have a real bond to their land. They have a real bond to their family, and I mean, despite all those years of hardship, they've managed to survive and continue to grow in their customs and their traditions. And I think that is probably the most inspirational part of the trip I got.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Oh, no problem.